In this demo, I'm going to show you how to create mock APIs using Fabricate. We'll start with this database that I created that has an accounts table with ID and name, and then a users table where each user is in an account. So if we want to put a mock API in front of this database, we can go to the database settings, click the API tab, and then here is where you can write JavaScript code that's deployed within Fabricate that allows you to implement any API contract that you want and access a snapshot of the fake database that you create with Fabricate. So let's uncomment the example here. And then in order to publish this API, what we need to do is create a snapshot of our database that's stored within Fabricate. So we do that by clicking here. We can give it a name, create the snapshot. That's now stored within Fabricate, and then our code, when it does like db.query, is querying that snapshot. So the idea is that you define your API endpoints, and then you can access the database and return data in whatever format that you want. And the shape of this API is very familiar for anyone who's done development with Express. But you don't necessarily need to be an expert in the API because we have a built-in AI composer that can write the code for you. So for example, let's say that we wanted to get a particular account by ID. We can just tell it, get an account by ID. We hit generate. It'll write the code for us. So get account/ID. It's doing select star from accounts where ID equals the value of the ID request parameter. And then it's returning the account, or if it's not found, returning a 404. So we can add that to our API. We hit save. And then now this is published instantly to Fabricate's serverless cloud. So if I wanted to now call this API, what I can do is if I go to help here, it will give me the URL that I need. Here we go. Your API is available at this URL. So this is the prefix. And then everything after this would be the route patterns that are defined in your actual API. So let's test calling this with Postman. Okay, so here's Postman. I'm going to just add a request to call get account 1, and then we'll put that in there, and then it's /accounts/1 because that's the path that we defined here. And what we should get if we call this is actually an authentication error because we have to set up our API keys first. So in order to do that, we need to go into My Account, and then we need to add an API key. Click Create a new API key. We can call it Demo. And then when you create the API key, you have the option to grant access to all existing workspaces, either as an editor or as a viewer. I'm not going to be making any changes to my setup with this API key, so I'll just grant viewer access. And click Create API key. Then we copy this, and this is the bearer token for our authentication. So if we go over here into authorization, actually let's just do it up at the collection level. We can choose bearer token, paste this here, save, and now if we go back here and click send, then we have our account 1. Let's do something a little bit more sophisticated. Let's get a user by ID and also return the account information. So let's see what the AI does with that. Get a user by ID and also return the account information as a child object, maybe. Let's see. Okay. So let's see, what it's going to do is it'll find the user by ID, and then it'll also do a nested lookup of the account, and then it'll compose that into a single object. So I think that's what we want. Let's hit add to API. Let's save. And then let's go fetch user1. So if we go back here, let's add a new request. And we can just copy the URL from this. /users/1, send. Okay, so now we have the user and then also the nested account as an object there. So the API is smart enough to fetch associations, and compose a deep object graph. It doesn't have to just fetch from a single table. We can also write a method like to update a user. So for example, let's say update a user by ID. So generate. Okay, so what this is going to do is it'll get the properties, first name, last name, and email from the post body. In this case, not a post body, but a patch body. And then it's going to update the user's record accordingly, and then respond accordingly. So if we hit add to API here, and then we can save and deploy. Now we've got to make another new request and copy the URL here. Let's change this to patch, like that. And then for our body, let's do JSON. And yeah, let's say like first name. Here, actually, we can copy it from here. Let's just copy these details like here, and then put that there. There. Instead of Mallory, let's shorten it to Mal or Mal. Okay, so now I'll save this request, and then I'll hit send, and then now it's saying updated. So now if we go back and get user1, then now you can see Mal has been updated with the shortened name. So our API is not only read-only, but it's actually a living, breathing database snapshot that's stored within Fabricate, and you can make updates to it as well. So your mock APIs can be used for example, behind like UIs that need to be able to actually update a database in addition to being able to query it. So that's how you create mock APIs with Fabricate. This is ideal for front-end developers who maybe don't need a database, but they actually need to connect to an API. Same thing for microservices developers. Great during sort of the design process when you're building your UX. It gives developers sort of full control over the data that they're going to get back from the API without having to work with another team or deploy to a staging server. Just connect to Fabricate instead of your normal base URL, and then you can instantly deploy changes, play around with APIs, regenerate data, change the data that you're sending. All that sort of stuff really makes for a nice high velocity workflow.